Hey, comic lovers, EMoney, the old man, and Thor the Dog of Thunder here with you again. So, if you think Thor might look a little different this week, well, there's a good reason for that. Thor...
Just giving out all that private stuff, aren't you?
I'm sorry, do you not want me to disclose your private information, Thor?
I don't guess he cares.
Full disclosure, I appreciate that, Thor. Alright, so Thor, well, he lost his hammer. He's no longer worthy. But it's okay.
You're worthy.
Yeah, we still love him.
You're worthy.
Yeah. Alright, so today we are talking about the Copper Age of comic books. The time from, it's a fairly short period from 1986 to 1991. And it was an interesting time in comic books, and we're going to cover a lot of that today. You alright, boy?
Is he alright? You better took my hand off. Easy.
Alright, get ready to take a trip back through the 80s, kids. Or maybe just to the 80s, because, depending on how old you are. This is Back Issues. Alright, comic lovers, so before we get started today, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on your notifications, give us a thumbs up, and if you like, leave us a comment. Alright, so the Copper Age. So it's a fairly short period for comic books. How did this thing get started?
Well, basically it got started because you and I decided we were going to break the modern age down into 3 different segments. And to be honest, it's tough to research this because most websites from 85 to present, they just do one age. So I had to do a lot of extra work trying to find sources that gave us a little bit more information. But at any rate, this week, Copper Age from 85 to 91. Next week, we're going to do Extreme Age from 92 to 98, even though we've already kind of done a video on that. I'll find more stuff.
Okay.
And the week after that, Back Issues will be about the movie age from 99 to today. All right, so let's go.
All right, let's do it.
What's the beginning of the Copper Age, you asked?
I did ask that.
The old man is going to call this decision a real crisis.
Ah.
You see what I did there?
Yeah.
Crisis. Crisis. You guys got it, didn't you? I should hope so. Yep. The old man says the Copper Age started with the publication of DC's Crisis on Infinite Earths. In fact, that title was such a big deal, I think we're going to give it a little bit more of our time.
All right.
All right, first of all, let me introduce you to Marv Wolfman. There you go, EMoney. A different guy to put a picture of. You don't have to keep putting Martin Goodman's mugshot up there.
Well, you just mentioned him, so now I gotta...
Oh, okay. So the first one, Marv Wolfman, and then... No, I'm not going to tell you to put Martin Goodman back up.
Okay.
All right, anyway, Wolfman started in comics with DC in 1968. I mean, 1968, I was like 13. But at any rate, he got a few credits under his belt. Then he jumped ship to Marvel in 1972. He started working at Marvel under the editor at that time, Roy Thomas, which hopefully a lot of y'all have heard of. Then when Roy Thomas left the position, Wolfman was promoted to the #1 guy at Marvel. Now, there was a dispute with Marvel. I couldn't find anything about what that dispute was, what they got all in a tizzy about. But in 1980, Wolfman came back to DC. And he teamed up with George Perez and started working on the new Teen Titans. They introduced Starfire, Raven, and Cyborg in DC Comics Presents number 26. All right, so around the time of the early 80s after he came back to DC, he started to realize how cumbersome all the different DC Earths were to both the fans and the writers. It was ridiculous. I mean, anytime somebody wanted to start a new story that contradicted any previous continuity, screw it, we'll just say it's on a different Earth. And it got ridiculous. So, Wolfman, in his infinite wisdom, came up with a plan to clean it up. He pitched the idea to the DC bigwigs, wasn't sure how they were going to take it, because it was a really big deal. And they bought into the idea. In fact, they hired a researcher to go back and read all of DC's comics in their own library.
Ooh.
Yeah, it took him 2 years. Now, I mean, can you imagine? I want that gig.
Like, sign me up.
Yeah, get paid to sit in the basement somewhere and read comic books all day long. They don't have to give me overtime. That'd be wonderful. All right, back to George Perez. Now, he wasn't the original guy that they were thinking about for the book, because the bigwigs weren't sure George Perez would be wanting to take that on. But when somebody pitched it to him, he jumped at it. Now, he claims that this was an opportunity for him to get to draw everybody. And he would get to draw people that he knew he might never have a chance to draw again.
Sure.
So he loved it. So after years of planning, Crisis on Infinite Earths #1 came out in January of 1985. The tagline for the series was, "Worlds will live, worlds will die, and nothing will ever be the same." True that. So, series, immediate hit, was flying off the shelves. And I've read a lot of comments from various people in the industry about this miniseries, and most of them agree that this saved DC Comics. That DC Comics was in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
But they also praised Wolfman for having the balls to take on a story that changed an entire established universe. And of course, everybody loved Perez and the work he did. And most people think he was the perfect artist for the story, myself included.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I might have to read it again. And you know, for once, this show has got me to read something. I don't have to go and buy anything. We already own it.
All right.
Yes.
So we have this to thank for, if you're a fan of the DC Arrowverse, then the recent Crisis on Infinite Earths, I mean, obviously they had to change a lot of things because, they had their established characters in the DC Arrowverse, but it was, definitely took their cue from this trade right here.
Hey, we got to see Tom Welling again.
Tom Welling.
Now I did it. Here we go, another event.
We waited, I forget exactly how many years, it felt like maybe 8 years after Smallville ended, and he still doesn't get to put the suit on. And what's more is he gave up his powers. Spoiler alert. So I was a little upset about that, but he still got to stick it to Lex. So and side note, John Cryer, probably the best Lex Luthor on screen out there. And
now, yeah, he's good, but I think the problem is there's been a lot of bad Lex Luthors.
Yes.
So,
I don't know, maybe he didn't have a lot of competition. All I know is you see him on 2.5 Men and you're like, this guy?
Yeah.
This guy's going to be Lex Luthor? But I thought he was pretty amazing in it. And
I agree.
Still
he
is.
did a good job.
Yep.
He did a good job.
All right. So that's Crisis on Infinite Earths.
So moving into a new subject. That's called a segue.
Yep.
All right. This Copper Age is when a lot of creators started to become dissatisfied with the constraints that were put on them by working under contracts and having their creations owned by, publishers, other people. So things started to get a little antsy, I guess you would call it. So by 1978, Jim Shooter had become editor-in-chief for Marvel. Now, I'm going to be polite here because I've heard it phrased a lot more harshly. I don't think Shooter was very popular. Creators started bailing out to do their own thing. Some creator-owned stuff started showing up at some of the smaller companies. Like Mike Baron and Steve Rude did the award-winning Nexus for Capitol Comics in mid-'81. Howard Chaykin put out the adult-oriented American Flag for First Comics in 1983. John Ostrander did Grimjack, which I really liked, for First Comics in mid-1985. Also in the mid-'80s, a bunch of smaller companies started popping up. You see Ace Comics, Apple Comics, Dark Horse Comics, Eternity Comics, Fanagore Press, Gladstone Comics. Malibu, Slave Labor Graphics, and Solston Publications. Now, some of these companies were hot for a while. I mean, I think most of them are gone now except for Dark Horse Comics, but for a while they were great. All right, so some of the stuff that the Copper Age, you could say, is known for, and I'm going to try to do this chronologically.
All right.
Marvel had started a division called Star Comics, basically stuff for the younger readers, which I praise them for doing something like that. I mean, if you don't have young readers, your industry is doomed. It's just a matter of time. And that's one of the things I'm starting to be concerned about is when I go into a comic book shop, the average age is somewhere between me and you. There aren't a lot of young people in there. Stuff's too expensive. Well, and to be honest, the writers or creators are aiming things more toward our age group, which is good, but that future could be a bad thing. But at any rate, Star Comics put out Thundercats #1 in late 1985. Then you had The Dark Knight Returns, Frank Miller, early 1986. Mouse, M-A-U-S. I never was sure how to pronounce it. It's a story by Art Spiegelman. It was published in mid-86 about his father, a survivor of the Holocaust. And when he finished that publication, I think it was 2 issues, not sure, but there was a lot of time in between. But that book won a Pulitzer Prize Special Award in 1991. Comics have come a long way. All right, speaking of Dark Horse Comics, they put out their first comic, Dark Horse Presents #1, in 1986. Now, this was an anthology book, and I'll be honest with you, I looked forward to it because you never knew what was going to pop up. You had alien stories, predator stories, but in #1, you get the first look at Black Cross and Concrete. Never heard either one of those, have you?
Nope.
Well, Concrete was a really well-written story. It was the thinking man's comic. I don't know that I was ever the thinking man, but anyway, I enjoyed it. All right, then Alan Moore's Watchmen come out in mid-1986, 12-issue miniseries. I think that was a DC publishing the Watchmen, which was in a British magazine at first, but at any rate, DC put it out in 1986. In late 86, Marvel launches their new universe, a whole bunch of new titles. Titles like Starbrand and Spitfire and the Troubleshooters. I wasn't real crazy about those titles, but I did like DP7. None of them really lasted a long time. In early 1987, Frank Miller's story arc, Batman Year One, started in Batman #404, and it ran for 4 issues. Also, in 1987, Louisville artist-writer, who you've met, Don Rosa, has his Son of the Sun story published in Walt Disney's Uncle Scrooge #219. Don went on to have many Uncle Scrooge stories published by Gladstone and then Walt Disney's comics division himself. He was a very popular creator. In fact, in Europe, he was a superstar. But at any rate, April of '87, after 9 years, your boy Jim Shooter, you want to do another picture?
Throw it up there.
Is fired from Marvel as editor-in-chief. In the fall of 1987, Marvel has this big Spider-Man storyline crossover event, Kraven's Last Hunt. Now, this was honestly one of my favorite stories from this era. It gave you the feels.
Oh.
I mean, good stuff. They need to do that in MCU or TV or something. All right, so early '88, DC published The Killing Joke by Alan Moore and Brian Boland. All right, you had the first full appearance of Venom, an Amazing Spider-Man #300, drawn by Todd McFarlane. That was in mid-'88. All right, in January of '89, Ron Perlman, not the actor Ron Perlman, Ronald Perlman buys the Marvel Entertainment Group for $82.5 million. Woo! Also, in 1989, Jim Shooter and Stephen Masarski started up Voyager Communications. Now, Valiant Comics was a division of Voyager Communications. assume a lot of y'all have heard of Valiant Comics. They got several creators from Marvel Comics like Bob Layton and Barry Windsor-Smith to jump over to them. We'll get back to them in a minute. In mid-1990, Spider-Man #1 by Todd McFarlane was published. Now this is a signed copy I have here. If you've heard one of our chapters of back issues, I talk about a not so pleasant experience with Mr. McFarlane. Mm-hmm. I still have his comic book signed. I don't care. All right, in early '91, New Mutants number 98, the first appearance of Deadpool by Rob Liefeld is published by Marvel Comics. Now, I can't end the episode on that. So, in mid-1991, back to Valiant Comics, they released its first title, Magnus Robot Fighter. What's a robot do when it gets killed? Squee! Yes. All right. I had to make sure I put something after New Mutants 98. I'm not ending an episode on that guy. All right. So that's it for the Copper Age. I'll let you know what we missed. You know, if you think it was important and I missed it, I'd like to know. And next week, we're going to talk about the extreme age of comics, which includes the years 92 through 98.
All right, looking forward to that. All right, so I have a Copper Age edition of Stump the Old Man, plus an added Thor question, of course.
Oh, man.
So let's head back into the garage with Thor. All right, now it's time for a special Copper Age edition of Stump the Old Man, plus a added Thor question here.
I got this.
All right, so best 2 out of 3. First one. And you should know this if you've been paying attention when we're filming.
I pay attention. What do you mean? Go ahead.
What issue was the first variant comic book, which was released during the Copper Age in 1986?
Man of Steel, #1.
That is correct. It is Man of Steel #1 by John Byrne.
And to tell you what, when that hit, everybody thought that DC gone mad.
Oh yeah.
So what are you doing?
While it was the first, it didn't garner a lot of attention from collectors. The first variant to really get attention from collectors was ones that really significantly raised the price above the cover price was in 1987 when DC briefly considered changing their name to Superman Comics.
Oh.
The idea was quickly aborted, but not before they tested the new logo on 2 comics in small markets, Justice League #3 and Firestorm #61. The rare Superman Comics variant immediately went for $50 at conventions. In '93, Wizard priced the Justice League variant at $95 and Firestorm at $65.
I remember chasing after those, never could get my hands on one.
By '99, they had fallen to about half those values. In 2009, they were down to $10, which was still 10 times the value on the regular covers.
Right, which is very typical in the comic market.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, stuff shoots up. Look at Death of Superman.
Yep.
It dropped like a rocket.
Most recently, they were going for around $50 ungraded on eBay. All right, so 1 for 1. All right, number 2, I have our Thor-related question here. What line from Thor Ragnarok was suggested to Chris Hemsworth by a Make-A-Wish kid who happened to be visiting on set that day?
I have no idea.
The line was,
"We know each other. He's a friend from work."
suggested by a Make-A-Wish kid. That's fun.
How am I supposed to know something like that?
All right, so 1 for 2 today.
He's mad because I got the last couple of weeks right.
All right, so I have another question about a quote.
Right.
Batman, the highest grossing superhero film of the Copper Age, has a now famous line that was actually improvised. What iconic line originally read in the script, "I am the Knight"?
I mean, I can only think of one quote close to that. It's, "I'm the Batman."
Okay, I mean, that's technically correct, but you're saying it wrong. Like, you're doing it Christian Bale style.
Oh, okay.
Michael Keaton was like,
What are you? I'm Batman.
Close enough, I win.
all right, so 2 out of 3. The old man wins this round
You're not
again.
very comfortable, are you? This chair's getting too little for you.
Yep.
We'll have to fix it.
All right, comic lovers. Like, yeah, I have the bag now. I have the bag. Yeah, look at that.
Eat his fingers off like you do mine. Damn.
All right, so that about wraps up this episode. But before we go, a little bit about what we're going to be doing next week. And next week, we are going to be continuing our series on the history of comic books with the Extreme Age. And I feel like we've kind of done this one already. But,
We talked about it a little bit. It's happened.
Yeah, but we're going to try and cover some new ground here on this episode.
I go deep.
Yeah. All right, so make sure to tune in next week, kids, and don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you then. Excelsior.
True believers. Deadpool? Really? Deadpool.
Ryan Reynolds.